Content over everything.
Parties and tried to influence them with an agent employed by the Israeli embassy directly.
So what's the difference between that and Corbyn coming alongside Hamas supporters?
Corbyn actually did not come alongside Hamas supporters. That's the sort of slander that's been repeated again and again and again. Corbyn, no matter what you think about him, was trying to draw together different forces politically on an international scale to try and resolve the conflict in Israel. He believes in a two-state solution in Israel, which many other people do as well. I happen to think one state is superior, but it should be a socialist state. Some people think that's a mad idea. There are, however, and I met people even from the early days of the formation of Israel, who actually were Zionists and left-wing Zionists. And they advocated a unified Israel which treats the Palestinians and the Israelis on an equal footing. That is not, however, how Israel operates today.
Is that why Corbyn spent time with the IRA as well? Because he wanted to...
Spent time what?
With the IRA. He wanted
Corbyn,
to bring people together.
When Margaret Thatcher screamed and shouted and her thugs at Speaker's Corner called for the hanging of Nelson Mandela, at that time, Jeremy Corbyn was discussing and debating with those who were considered terrorists in South Africa, those who were considered terrorists in Britain in relation to Northern Ireland, but it turned out afterwards that Margaret Thatcher was also discussing with them. So it's utter and complete hypocrisy. They merely attack Jeremy Corbyn because he's Jeremy Corbyn.
No, why?
Because he
What's the
stands...
reason?
You can't say because
Does he
he's
believe in a united
Why?
Ireland?
My friend, many people believe in a united Ireland. Most people in Ireland believe in a united
so
Ireland.
You're not loyal to the United Kingdom?
That doesn't make him not loyal to the United Kingdom. It means he recognises the right of the Irish people to escape from the history of British imperial domination of Ireland. That's all.
Northern Ireland want to remain part of the United Kingdom.
Yes, and he hasn't opposed that. In fact, the people who've sabotaged that is the Conservative Party, because they made a deal which undermines the position of Northern Ireland in relation to Southern Ireland. So you can hardly accuse Jeremy Corbyn of causing that problem, just the same as Boris Johnson goes on television every single day and repeats his mantra that he's been told to spout out again and again and again. Get Brexit done, leave, the United Kingdom leaves united and whole. Well, that's not what his allies in the DUP think. And they were propping up the Tory government for 2 years, from 2016, to 2019, 3 years. So the idea, 2017 to 2019. So the idea that you can blame the problems in Ireland and the sectarian tensions which now exist in Ireland on Jeremy Corbyn is a complete and absolute farce. And by the way, you can also not blame the violence of the IRA just upon the IRA. Don't forget, there were people killed on Bloody Sunday by the British forces that led to the uprising that took place, which was a civil rights movement that began in Northern Ireland, don't forget. A civil rights movement by the Catholics, who again were a people treated with boundaries, borders and walls, with secret police agents, with false flag killings happening, with bombs set off by the British government sometimes, and then claimed to be by the IRA, like the Guildford pub bombings. And it was Jeremy Corbyn who fought alongside those people who were wrongly convicted, and he was proven correct that they were not terrorists. And in actual fact, the British establishment have been carrying out terrorism. That's the reason why they all attack Jeremy Corbyn. They say anti-Semitism, they say terrorist supporter, because they know damn well that throughout these years, he took a straightforward and honest position, and he attempted, rightly or wrongly, to bring the sides together and to unite the people in fighting against sectarianism and terrorism in Britain, in Ireland, and worldwide. That's the way he's operated.
And you do that by breaking up the United Kingdom.
Sorry?
And you do that by breaking up the United Kingdom.
My friend, on the contrary, I said,
Doesn't he want to give away the Falkland Islands as well?
I said, you said to me, he wants to do that by breaking up the United Kingdom. What's the evidence for this?
Well, if you're
In
supporting
fact,
the United Island, then you're breaking up the United Kingdom, aren't you?
well, firstly, he believes that the people of the North have the right to decide themselves. And they would decide so independently of the South. And that's, after all, what the Good Friday Agreement said. What you're saying is, or I believe what Boris Johnson's saying, I'll say that instead of what you're saying, what Boris Johnson's saying is that we made a deal with the DUP to keep in office, but now I no longer can trust the DUP because I wanted to make my own deal to rush it through with the European Union in order to get myself to be world king for as long as possible.
But they've got the
And
choice
so
to get
I
out.
have decided to make a deal which stuffs the DUP, which leaves Northern Ireland within the parameters of the European Union, while the rest of Britain has a separate legal status. And that, you tell me, is Jeremy Corbyn's fault. It is not Jeremy Corbyn's fault. It is the creation of the British government under the leadership of Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson, trying to prove to the population how militant and determined they are. And studies have shown that the majority of Conservatives are quite happy to see Northern Ireland and Scotland break away from the Union of Britain if it gets Brexit done. So when he talks about another referendum in Scotland, the tension in Scotland is quite clear because the British government wants to carry out a vicious policy of economic deregulation in the interest of linking up with the United States, which nobody's voted on, and if that means alienating the people in Scotland, alienating the people in Northern Ireland, well, the Conservative Party has no real base in Scotland, and in Northern Ireland, sectarianism has always been their ally. The DUP, don't forget, are still aligned with the UDA, and the UDA is still a prescribed terrorist organisation. So who are they to talk to Jeremy Corbyn about terrorism when they've been in government with an organisation that has links to a known prescribed terrorist organisation to this day? So what are they talking about? Utter and complete bend over and speak up language. I wrote an article in 2015, which was published in Labour Briefing. That article was the first summation of Jeremy Corbyn's views on British society and on the world for his leadership election campaign. He praised that article himself. In that article, I went through all the reports in Hansard, all his speeches and all his comments since 1983 when he was first elected. And the overwhelming majority of his speeches were on international issues of solidarity with people around the world who needed their rights defended, who needed to be protected against war, against terror, against sectarianism, and against dictatorial governments oppressing their people and driving them into penury or imprisoning them or torturing them, etc. Like, by the way, the European Union, the British government, rallied all of a sudden behind the Bolivian coup d'etat a couple of weeks ago. They're all screaming and shouting how terrible it is in Bolivia. In actual fact, the people voted in Bolivia nearly 60% for Evo Morales. And he was removed simply because the Americans and the Europeans do not like his government, which has raised the living standards of the people of Bolivia, to raise them out of penury and squalor, which the people lived in for centuries, particularly the indigenous people. And now you can see what the actual policy is. The Americans, the British and the European governments are using, or better said, are backing a semi-fascist regime in Bolivia that is using the armed forces to shoot dead opponents and demonstrators on the streets of Bolivia. That's the reality of what this power relation is. And so Jeremy Corbyn, you can check back on his record from 1983 onwards, has been a militant defender of the rights of the overwhelming majority of people around the entire world. No matter what religion, no matter what country, no matter what continent, he has stood up for the oppressed against the oppressors. That's why they hate him. That's why they oppose him. That's why they organise their campaigns against him. That's why they slander him. And that's why the mass media, normally, supposedly balanced and equal, is vociferously and absolutely opposed to Jeremy Corbyn becoming Prime Minister of this country. Not because of the reasons they claim, but because they feel their interests and their power will be undermined. That's why they're scared of a national bank. That's why they're scared of an investment programme. That's why they're scared of workers on the boards of companies. That's why they're scared of free tuition, because they want a society divided between the wealthiest elite who control everything. They lord over society. They own the mass media. They own the newspapers. They own the main internet companies. They own Google. They own Facebook. These billionaires and millionaires manipulate the minds of the population. They create artificial intelligence algorithms that hide from you the reality of what the views of the population are. They manipulate you into thinking you're communicating with others when actually they're using your communication to isolate you from others. What's that? What's that?
Social media, you're saying that Google and the algorithms and what have you are being used to...
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I'll tell you who lies to people. Our politicians lie to people.
Many of them do.
All the people that said they would respect the referendum in 2019 have turned their back on what they originally promised.
So what did it
has allowed those people to be held to account because there's been videos being circulated on Facebook and Twitter highlighting...
Okay, let me just ask you this question. When the vote took place in 2016, Leave or Remain, I voted Remain, but I stated at the time, and you can check back on my videos on YouTube, I'm kind of ambivalent about the question. I don't support the European Union, and I don't support Britain as it is. So I'm kind of ambivalent, but I took a position. I took that position because I didn't like the rising xenophobia. However, my point was this. What exactly do you imagine should have happened on June 2016 after the referendum voted to leave? What should have happened? And then? Negotiating.
In a good, strong position as well.
Sorry, negotiating. So, negotiation. What has happened since that time? Well, there was negotiation. I'm sorry, are you trying to blame Labour for the obstruction?
Well, yes.
I'm sorry, was there a Conservative government in power?
I'm blaming the whole establishment.
No, but which government was in power? You said negotiation should have happened.
Right, okay, so
I agree, negotiation, let's say yes.
Theresa May lost the majority in the last general election.
Well, firstly, why was the last general election called? Why was the last general election called?
Because she wanted to establish a majority.
But she had a majority.
But she wanted that over the period of time that we were...
So who was stopping her deal?
Well, no, she made a mistake.
Who was stopping her majority government, which had negotiated a deal with the European Union? Who was stopping it?
At that point, they hadn't negotiated.
Well, they were trying to. Who was stopping it?
I remember the entire parliament.
It was Boris Johnson was stopping it. Yes, he voted twice against her deal. She made a deal with the European Union, oven ready to put in the microwave, as Boris Johnson says, and he said no. What?
After she lost the majority,
Then she had the DUP. She had the DUP, confidence and supply arrangement. Still the Tories. Who should have negotiated? You see, you can't blame me or Corbyn or the Labour Party for failing in negotiation when we were never involved in those negotiations. Well, what does it matter? What does it matter? The Tories have been in power throughout. The Conservative Party has been in power throughout. So how have we betrayed the Brexit vote? How?
Well, because there's been a whole load of MPs that have been voting against what they consider...
Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson is one person.
Boris Johnson and the ERG, who now control the Tory party, they prevented Theresa May from passing her deal. That's fact. So how can you blame Labour? In fact, Boris Johnson put a deal. He put his deal only a month ago in Parliament, and it was Labour MPs who got it through. So what are you talking about? What's that?
Why do you fight Corbyn now, then?
I've always backed Corbyn. It's nothing new. I've been backing Corbyn since I started speaking in Speaker's Corner in 1986. There's no secret about that.
Why?
Because I believe in socialism. And socialism...
Everywhere where it's worked, it's failed.
Well, so they say. 30 years ago, the Berlin Wall fell. I lived in East Germany at that time. I fought against the government in East Germany. I've got a secret police file because they were watching over me. I was opposed to that government because I believed in a democratic form of socialism. Many other people believe in a democratic form of socialism. In fact, the Labour Party, for all its failings, has always declared it favours a democratic form of socialism. You are saying that socialism and democracy is a combination which is impossible to realise. I disagree. History has proven many things. History has proven the United States, despite being democratic, is controlled by a government and a regime and a real set of power relations that in actual fact are dictatorial. They're not democratic. They're controlled by large corporations which dominate the society and give you every 4 years the appearance of having participation in democracy. Whereas in reality, the mass media, the education system, the legal system, the military, the police, the judiciary, and the executive and legislative sections of American government are controlled by money, not by the people. That's the reality of power. And I think you know that, even if you deny it. I think you know that's true. And in actual fact, the only reason we have got
the battery pack.
just trying to sort this battery pack out. You're going away, shame. It was a useful addition. Never mind. Yes, I think it's going to die anyway.
We've known each other a very long time. I've been coming to this park since 1984. And I like everything that you say. There's very little where we part company. But I must ask a question, and this perhaps has less to do with the subject also. If you want to tell me, come back another time when you're discussing this, I'm more than happy to do so. I really want to know about the situation of the Uyghurs in the Xinjiang province of northwestern China, having watched a documentary, a panorama documentary on BBC One on Monday night.
I am happy to talk about that, but it's really not the subject matter for today.
Not a problem. Really
I'll be more than happy to talk about. When the election's over, I'm happy to talk about China or something. The only real thing I'd say about China, connected in with the argument that was being made earlier on, is that despite my disagreement with the dictatorship in China, and I write for a government website in China, so I'm not going to hide my position on that. Despite my disagreements with the government in China, the one thing they have proven beyond any doubt whatsoever is that an economy dominated by publicly owned banks and publicly owned enterprises can develop faster than a capitalist economy. That argument, I think, has been proven by the evidence from the last 30 years in China and more. That, I think, is a very strong argument for public ownership here in the United States of America and in Europe. That's what can save. That's what can save. Well, in actual fact, that is incorrect.
You've done that.
Sorry, before you have your epileptic fit, there's a man over here. There's a man over here who's made a point. I'll try and because I couldn't really hear what you were saying.
No,
it seemed you were talking to yourself.
Cheap labour is what built up China.
Cheap labour is not the reason for China's development.
Why, sir?
The very simple reason, empirical fact, is what you're talking. Cheap labour is not. If you go to Primark now, if you'd gone there 15 years ago and wandered around the shop and looked at the labels, you'd probably find most of them made in China. If you go there now, you won't. Very simple reason. It is no longer cheap labour in China. People who keep harping on about that have not kept up with the facts. My PhD last year...
What a load of old rubbish!
My PhD last year was on China's economic development. Now, that doesn't mean I'm right, but I have read pretty much every single English language book on Chinese political economy. So where is your evidence coming from that cheap labour is the strength of China? Where's the evidence coming from?
Well, all the past
What's
years.
your source?
All the past years, it
None.
does that.
Right, so there is,
Yeah,
that's
but,
what
I
it
mean,
is.
the thing is that I don't have.
You don't have any source. You should Google and look up. You should do that. You should do that.
In China than they are in.
On the
You did
contrary.
say 15
Why
years
the-
ago it was cheap labour.
That's why
15 years.
manufacturing
No, I didn't say that. But I
flooded out
said
of the West.
it could have
Because it's
appeared.
labour.
It could have appeared to have been cheap labour 15 years ago, and it did appear.
Still is.
My friend, do you have any idea what the average wages are in China?
I'm going to
Do you have any idea? Well, then how can you possibly make a comment if you don't have any idea about the data? How can you possibly make a comment? You can't. So first look it up, then come back to us. That's what someone
No,
does
it's
with a
much
brain.
more fun just
If
to
you are
confront you with
completely
it.
new
For goodness
at
sake.
Speaker's Corner, it would be fine. But you're not. You come here every week.
What was on that?
You look at Argentina, you say about South America, flourishing with the socialism. It doesn't
With what?
flourish at all.
What?
It doesn't flourish at all. And this
What does? What did I say flourishes?
Cuba, Venezuela.
When did I say that?
No, inside South America.
When did I say that?
When did he say that?
So what are you saying against me?
No, you said it.
Are you trying to raise something up? Hang on, are you trying to say, are you trying to get a balloon with a Cuban flag on it, blow it up and pop it in front of me and say I'm responsible for that?
It doesn't prove itself. It didn't prove
Sorry,
itself.
what didn't prove itself?
Socialism.
Socialism.
Yeah.
Ah,
Right.
that's a different issue. Now, socialism.
Yeah, we're getting there, innit? They need help, you know.
Socialism as a term has quite a broad back. Right? There are all sorts of people who claim to be socialists. Right? From Fidel Castro to Tony Blair. So,
He's a Tory.
call themselves socialists, I said. There are all sorts of people who call themselves socialists. My variant of socialism, as you admit, there are people in the German government who call themselves socialists. There are people in Israel, in America, in China, in Cuba, in America. You know, Bernie Sanders calls himself a socialist. So not every socialist are the same. Right? So I argue, as a socialist, for public ownership of the commanding heights of the economy and the democratic control of the people. Now, that's what I argue for. Now, you can argue against any other regime you want in the world, but if you want to argue with me, you argue with what I'm arguing for or against. You might turn around and say, sorry? in the UK? Yes, that's what I argue for. I argue for public ownership of the decisive levers of the economy. The banks, the biggest companies. There are 150 companies in Britain that control 70% of the valuation of the stock market in this country.
Yes.
There are 6 million companies, private limited companies in this country. 150 of them control the economy.
Sorry,
They
did you say
control
6 billion?
through that monopolization or oligopoly power, they dominate the rest of society.
Yep.
And yes, they control the political parties. They control
Yes,
the
yes,
mass
they do.
media. They control the education.
There are rich people who control this country. One of the delusions now.
A little louder, I couldn't hear you.
I say, people who control this world, socialism, capitalism, there are rich families who are controlling the world. And that's what's happening.
Okay, so you're taking a position. I understand it, I don't agree with it, but this is where we are. You're taking a position. Socialism, when it's been attempted in various countries in a more militant form, has ended up in dictatorship. That's indisputable. Has it in other countries not ended in dictatorship, but not overthrown capitalism? Yes. Is there a pathway between those processes? I believe there is. And I believe that's public ownership and democratic control, which I believe will be applicable in the United States, in Southern America, in Cuba, and in China. I believe democracy and socialism.
Right, 2,000 a year. That's
2,000
the
what?
average- What?
2,000 what?
2,000 pounds
GDP.
GDP.
GDP. What's the
It's
average?
sterling pounds.
£2,000.
Yes.
What
Google
source
it.
is that?
What?
What source is that?
Google.
Financial Times.
It's one of those
£2,000 what?
algorithms you're on about.
Let me see what it says. You know, pass your phone over. I won't break
Can I
it or
give
steal it.
him
No, it's not having
what capitalism would be?
I can't check what you're saying.
He'll probably take it for his
He
own
won't,
ownership.
he won't.
I'll have a look
We
at
all
it.
own this phone, and I'll
if-
never get it back.
You are, my friend. The ideal meeting for you
No, we're
then,
not having this phone.
if you're
either.
unable to discuss what's on your own phone, the ideal meeting for you is just over there.
18,000 yuan. That's the average yearly.
18 average yearly what? Urban, rural, total
Average
GDP.
income
Right, and
in China.
and
That's £2,000 a year average.
Compared
That's
with?
labour.
compared with
The rest of the world.
About, what is it, 25 in
Try-
this country? 20.
Mexico, Haiti, Egypt, Thailand,
Yes, but your point
Vietnam,
was that
Cambodia.
communism produces this wonderful system which has
Well, that
produced
wasn't
an
my
economic
point at all,
miracle.
actually.
It's not. It's
My
cheap
point was-
labour.
No, but his point is
unfortunately-
it's cheap labour that built up China.
That's
I'm
my
not.
point.
Well, that's false. That's false. It is public planning of the utilisation of resources. Many parts of the world have cheap labour. Many parts of the world. The overwhelming majority of people in Africa live poorer than in China. The overwhelming majority of people in India live poorer than people in China. Yet Africa and India were dominated by Britain. Up until, in the case of Africa, up until the 1960s. In the case of India, up until 1947, it was a colony of Britain. So Britain developed, over 200 years, developed India's economy. And yet the Indian people are poorer than the Chinese. Yet the Chinese people in 1978 were at a par level with the Indians. So how is it that the Chinese developed so rapidly when the Indians did not? Sorry? What?
There was a bubble there.
Where is there a bubble? Where is there a bubble? Where is there a bubble? In India. Where? Where? What are you referring to though? A Chinese bubble. What is the Chinese bubble?
Beware the bubble.
Economic bubble.
What is a bubble, my friend?
Receiving and they're doing things under.
A bubble is like this.
Like this.
A bubble is like that, like the gentleman's got here, right? That means, although there's a substance to it, a bubble is like the American banking system, lending money. America is what? I can't come forward a bit. I can't hear you. I can't come
China
forward.
is
Just a wee
holding
bit.
Americans' balls, testicles. China.
I'm sorry.
It's getting sexy
Who
now.
controls world trade? China?
I say,
Who dominates world trade?
I think China. Everyone looks at that like they're.
My friend, how do the goods from Primark get here?
Uber.
How do they get exactly? Huh? Import. How do the imports move around the world, my friend?
By vote,
By boat. By boat.
By
Now,
boat.
who controls the world seas? Huh?
each country with our own territory.
Each country with their own territory. My friend, were you born yesterday?
Yes.
The American Navy controls the world shipping lanes.
And the
The
GPS.
American Navy.
And the GPS.
Navy
What?
controlling the safety
Yes, but the
of-
American Navy is the military power which guarantees that the dollar is the exchange currency for goods moved around the world.
That's American for that.
Every
Because
day,
they're saving us.
let me give you the facts. Every day, 3,000 container ships in every 24 hours move around the world, delivering the goods that we consider world trade. Right? 3,000 ships a day. Now, in order for a country to control world trade, to have people exchanging in their currency, to be able to push other countries around, to be able to sanction them, impose restrictions on them, try and change governments or undermine them, they have to have military power. China is surrounded by enemy states. China's sea. In front of China, Taiwan, with American-backed government. In front of China, Japan. They have a treaty with the United States of America. In front of China, South Korea. They have weapons aimed at China.
Korea,
Yes, but
Korea.
North Korea exists because America invaded Korea. America invaded Korea and killed 2 million people in the 1950s in aerial bombardment of the people of Korea. That's why the people are so fanatical in North Korea, because America carried out mass murder bombings of those people.
Who controls North Korea?
North Korea is controlled by the government of North Korea, not by China, by the government of North Korea.
Excuse me, it is a crazy routine in what's happening in North Korea.
What's that?
Do you understand that?
What?
There is a crazy. I don't know.
Yes, but how do you make people crazy?
Oh, you was
If
doing
you
really
drop,
well.
if you kill 2 million people out of a few million people, it's not a difficult thing to make people crazy.
Millions are dying.
I'm not talking about excuses, I'm talking about explanation.
North Korea.
Explanation.
Now in North Korea. Do you accept
My
that?
friend, you must differentiate. You must differentiate between
No,
explanation.
of course, yes. There is a proof of that. People are get murdered because they brought proof.
My friend, are you trying to say that I'm responsible for that?
No, I just
We were talking about world trade.
those articles you
You
write.
said there's a bubble in the world economy. You said China's responsible for most world trade. I said America controls the seas. America controls world currencies.
And the military.
America controls the world economy. And it wants to maintain its dominance of the world economy.
I have no problem.
That's why they're imposing sanctions against China. That's why they're making a land grab on Hong Kong at the moment. They passed a law to support those lunatics in Hong Kong who go around every day throwing Molotov cocktails at the police,
What, the protesters?
and they call them Democrats. And then they say, they pass a law that says if Hong Kong does anything different to what America does, for example, sanctioning China, sanctioning Chinese products, then Hong Kong will be sanctioned itself. In other words, Hong Kong, according to the new law signed by Donald Trump, Hong Kong is now a colony of America.
Sorry, how is America?
They signed into law. They signed into law a so-called Hong Kong Democracy Act, where the Hang on a minute. I'm answering him.
Slowly.
I'm answering him.
You're getting the noodles mixed up.
America is demanding that Hong Kong carry out an audit every year. Hong Kong carry out the policies that America wants it to carry out, and if they don't, Hong Kong will be sanctioned. In other words, they're saying Hong Kong is part of the United States of America, and those lunatics waving the American flag and throwing Molotov cocktails at the police day in, day out, not a single protester has been killed. Last year, 1,000 people were shot dead by the police in America, in democratic America. You think people in New York could throw Molotov cocktails day in, day out? Look how those protests, Black Lives Matter, were treated in the United States of America. They gunned them down, right? Sorry?
China is aggressive.
What?
China is aggressive towards
One-
Hong Kong.
Towards
China
Hong
is
Kong.
Aggressive, yes.
My friend, you do not know what you're talking about.
China receives back Hong Kong.
What?
How long it takes till China receives back Hong Kong? How many years?
Hong Kong is Chinese.
China already put their hands. They put their hands.
My friend, under Margaret Thatcher, the Public Records Office was shown, you can check on the internet, under Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s, the police authority in Hong Kong, which is entirely British, was ordered to use live rounds against protesters in Hong Kong. In the 1960s, there were riots in Hong Kong. The British used live rounds to kill protesters in Hong Kong. Those protesters were pro-Beijing protesters in Hong Kong. But Hong Kong is part of China. Get used to it. Of course it is. Since 1997, Hong Kong was returned to China.
Yes.
It's known legally throughout the world, Hong Kong, Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China. That is the fact, my friend. You may not like it, but that is the legal fact in international law.
UK signed this contract.
Yes.
25 years you left to have a
My friend, ask yourself this. Was there a right to vote in Hong Kong under British rule? 150 years of British rule? Was there the right to vote?
No.
No, there was not. There was not. They had one vote. 2 years or so.
very well.
Sorry?
They had a very good conditions.
Very good
Under the
conditions.
British,
Under the British, 4 people were given control of Hong Kong. 4 oligarchs. They bought up all the land of the city. That's why the people are actually protesting, because they got nowhere to live. And because the people in Shenzhen, which used to be a village 40 years ago, the people in Shenzhen, there's twice the population of Hong Kong, and they live much higher living standards than Hong Kong. Because the British gave Hong Kong to 4 people to take control of, and they used the land, the control of the land, to control the prices, and that meant no normal person in Hong Kong could afford to live in a room, except in like 8 to a room, in like swap beds.
Who were those 4 people?
4 wealthiest Hong Kong families, right? I call them Li Shao-ching and others. So this is the reality of Hong Kong, contrary to the lies we are being told. And these goons from Hong Kong come on television like Joshua Wong and tell people we are protecting democracy. What are they talking about? You think anyone at university in London could occupy a university with Molotov cocktails, with bows and arrows, and then they turn around and say we're protecting democracy? What bloody lunatics are these people? Lunatics! Supported and promoted by the right wing in Britain and the right wing in America.
Yeah.
That's the.
Yeah.
And now in Bolivia they say when the Bolivians vote in their president, the most popular president in Bolivian history, when he's elected in, the Americans and the British and the Europeans organise a coup d'etat, overthrow the government, and they go around shooting people on the streets with impunity. And these people turn around and say, oh, we're defending the democratic will of the people of Bolivia. It's a lie. Sorry?
But we all agree.
Because Mexico has a democratic elected president who recognises the lies that are told.
Bolivia said to get out of here. You
What?
destroy your country with this Bolshevik crazy ideas. This is
What
they do.
Bolshevik crazy ideas?
Yes, like in Venezuela.
You mean the
Look at
majority?
Venezuela
You
is
see,
the best
you see,
example
here you have a
of the
problem.
cancer
Here you have a problem. Here you have a problem. When the people voted in Bolivia for Evo Morales, 3 times is it now? Living standards rocketed upwards. Why? Because the resources of the country were now used to benefit the people of the country rather than the oligarchical clique linked to America who led the people to live in penury for centuries in Bolivia. For centuries, my friend. And don't forget this. How did we get Hong Kong? You know how we got Hong Kong?
Yeah, opium.
Opium. We forced the people of China to take opium. And when they didn't accept it, we attacked China twice with gunships and forced the government to take their opium.
That's illegal, you know.
That's called
It
gunboat
is essential
diplomacy.
to
That's a drug
understand
on a big level.
where conflicts come from, to understand what the nature of those conflicts
I
are.
live in Venezuela and I want to cry.
Very nice,
because
very
these
nice.
people have no bread.
Well-
Because of this great socialism
made in
that we talk
China.
about.
Well, that's another question. I'm happy to discuss it another time, and you can check my videos on Venezuela going back to 2004. I went to Venezuela. I published videos
I
on
have a friend who ran
Venezuela.
away because they want to kill him because
Well,
he wasn't.
Have a sweet. It's really nice.
That's a slightly different issue, but I'll take it later. I'll take it up another time because we are talking about the general election and what socialism is rather than what socialism isn't. You're trying to tell me what socialism isn't, which is fair enough. The reason for the failure in Venezuela, if you want a quick summation, is because Hugo Chavez and his successor made one big mistake. One big mistake. And that mistake was to think that you can compromise between capitalism and socialism. That you can allow the multi-billionaires who are paid by the Americans and who organize coup d'etats in Venezuela, not only once but many times, that you can leave their wealth in their hands and they'll be persuaded by your good ideas to share power with the masses. The fact of the matter is, particularly in South America, and particularly in Venezuela and Bolivia, there are 2 layers to this. The oligarch believes that their power is due to their God-given right. And secondly, they believe that they are racially superior to the majority of people in Venezuela and in Bolivia. So you have a double-edged sword. You have an apartheid-type historical regime, like South Africa, like Israel, where you have a chosen white people who think they are endemically, inherently superior to the people of Venezuela or Bolivia. And they think they are dogs, black, indigenous dogs, who should be cleaning their houses, sweeping the streets, doing the dirty work. And when Hugo Chavez was elected, and when Evo Morales, one second, when Evo Morales was elected, when Hugo Chavez was elected, they overturned that balance of power. But what they didn't do is expropriate the oligarchs. And so those oligarchs, just as we're seeing in Britain today, they are using their power. 4 people, I believe it is in Britain, own all the newspapers that you see in the shops. They own the websites. You got Facebook, they say, Facebook, social media, you can say what you like. No, Facebook is based on artificial intelligence algorithms, feeding you information, not you choosing the information. They feed it to you and they manipulate you. and they have financial ads which you don't even notice, feeding into your brain, manipulating your behaviour, making you try and appear a certain way, think a certain way, buy certain things, and vote certain ways. We know that from the Cambridge Analytica scandal.
Yeah.
We know that from Edward Snowden, who, by the way, had to take asylum initially in Hong Kong and then in Russia. Julian Assange, he was put in prison with no charge at all. Now they say he's at risk of dying as a political prisoner in Britain today. No charges against him, other than the trumped up, literally trumped up charges. Whereas the reality, all he did was tell that Facebook, Yahoo, Google, Microsoft are working in conjunction, in cahoots with the National Security Agency of the United States of America to monitor every single electronic communication of all of you and of the governments and of the prime ministers of the entire world. That's what Edward Snowden showed. And Julian Assange showed the lies and slanders that they come out with. The WikiLeaks website showed again and again how American forces had lied about mass murders, about torture chambers set up by the Americans to rendition people from Europe and take them to torture chambers in Eastern Europe or in North Africa, to murder and kill thousands of people in Iraq and Afghanistan in torture chambers. They revealed images of American soldiers carrying out torture with dogs, with sexual torture, piling guys on top of each other, forcing them to have sex with each other for the gratification of prison guards of the American army, themselves dehumanized by the machinery of the state, manipulating them to go to war for lies. Stories about weapons of mass destruction, stories about protection democracy. We know for fact that these are lies. And so how can we believe that suddenly these people are somehow telling the truth? That we're somehow going to face the grand prospect of a Brexit from the European Union that will serve everybody's interest, that won't sell off the NHS. It's a damn lie. We're not going to sell off the NHS. Don't believe a bloody word. They plan to make...
For years and years after the
What?
Brexit,
What?
Even
What?
Corbyn didn't say yes or no.
Why should he say yes or no? Why should he?
Because he should.
Why?
Yes or no?
Why
That's fine.
should
You
he?
wanna be a
Why?
Remainer,
I'm
be a
asking you a
Remainer.
question.
Yes.
We all know Jeremy Corbyn hasn't taken a position.
Why not?
Why?
Why not?
No, I'm asking you. You're telling me he must take a position. Why?
Because if he wants to lead this country.
No, I'm
he
asking.
needs to know
Why
exactly
must
what
he
to
take a
know.
position? Is he going to win your vote?
Can I answer that?
Would you? Well, you can. I'll let you once. I'll let you once. I'll take you once. I know you come from a different direction.
Let's argue.
This
I
gentleman
don't
here,
know, okay?
not the same.
Doesn't
So let me
matter
take him
where.
first, and then I'll come on to you, James. Firstly,
I am a Remainer, okay? I'm a Remainer.
right.
Okay?
So you want him to support that?
I don't vote.
Do you support
Remainer,
Jeremy
okay?
Corbyn?
Some of these things.
Will
I
you
support.
vote for him next week?
No.
Right. So why must he take the position you want him to take?
No, not the other position. He needs to be clear.
Why?
He has been.
Why? From who? You mean from his own point of view or from your point of view?
Excuse me, there was a referendum in this country.
No, I'm asking you. I'm asking you. You've said you support Remain.
Yes.
You said you will not vote for Jeremy Corbyn.
No.
But you're saying he must take a position.
I would-
Why must he take a position? Why do you think he must take a position?
To answer the people.
Why do you think it? Is it going to change your mind? So why do you care what he says? Why do you care whether Jeremy support Corbyn doesn't take a position or not?
The opposition.
What? Why? Yeah, but why do you care? Why are you saying he must do this?
Look, you're asking
I
up
don't.
time. You're wasting time.
I believe he is right not to take a position.
Why?
Why? Because I do not believe either leaving the European Union or being in the European Union solves the problems in society.
Why don't he say that then?
The problems in society.
He doesn't even have that position.
He has attempted to take a position similar to that position, and he has done so in conditions where he's come under enormous pressure from Remain supporting MPs to take a pro-Remain position. Yes, but that's not his position. Right. Now, James here is a member of the Labour Party.
Has been a leaver, has been anti the EU right from the 1970s.
Yes, yes.
And he's now faced by a membership of the party that wants to remain. So rather than make a choice, most Labour leaders would have had to have done.
Be honest.
I don't deny. I'm not denying that.
That is the reason
but
why.
I believe he's correct to do that. I believe he's correct to do that for the following reason. The divisions in society are not between Britain and Scotland, or England and Scotland, or Britain and Northern Ireland, or Britain and Europe. The divisions in society are between the billionaires and the wealthiest strata, which control the dominant sectors of the economy, and the mass of the population. That is a division that is replicated in the European Union. And therefore, if you want to appeal to the majority of working people and the poor in Britain and internationally, I believe you could consistently stand on a position of socialist internationalism. So that means you promote the policies and interests of the overwhelming majority of working people in Britain, internationally, in Europe, anywhere in the world. That is a socialist position. It's a consistent socialist position. He believes that the division between Remain and Leave is a false dichotomy. I agree with him. It is a false dichotomy.
Yeah, he's never said that.
Well, it's quite clear that's what he believes.
My boy. I
So
like
that's
this.
what he says.
First time voter.
That's what he says.
Let us understand his rationale.
Well, I'm giving you my rationale. He's given his. You may not be happy with it. I'm giving mine. I speak at Speaker's Corner. I give my point of view. It's not sitting on the fence.
It is
I
sitting
do
on the
not
fence.
believe. I do not.
It is.
Sitting on what
He's
fence?
going to be screwed if he
On
says, I want to
sitting
leave.
on- Sorry?
He'd get screwed if he says,
Why
I want to
should he
leave.
say that?
Because he is really a Brexiteer.
On the contrary.
He always has been in the past.
This is a
we should
foolish
do
argument.
a new
What he argued was, I attended a rally the first week that Jeremy Corbyn stood for leader of the Labour Party. And I interviewed him, you can find it on YouTube. And it was about Greece. At that time, when Jeremy Corbyn was standing for election, the Greek crisis emerged. And in that Greek crisis, he was allies with Syriza, with Varoufakis and with at that
Don't let
time
us swear now.
the head of the party. What was his name
I used to
again?
go uni with him.
Useless
Varoufakis.
creature that was head of the party. Tsipras.
Yeah, Tsipras.
And
yeah,
Tsipras
yeah,
initially said, we will fight the European leadership. They can't impose
Yeah,
dictatorship
yeah.
on us.
Then they,
What happened was, after the
they
referendum,
forced him in there.
where he got massive majority opposing the European Union's deal, Tsipras capitulated
Yeah.
within 1 day.
Yeah.
Within 1 day. Because as far as Varoufakis was concerned, they waterboarded him time and
Yes,
again,
yes.
saying your people will be starving on the streets.
Yes.
So how can Jeremy Corbyn, given that he supported the Greek people, turn around and say, oh yes, I support, uncritically I support the European Union? Of course he can't do that, and he'd be wrong to do that. You have to be honest and open with people. Yes, you can
Like
say
Jeremy
Corbyn hasn't been open enough about that. I believe he should have been harder on that. And I've said all along what my point of view on that question is. I do not see how you can do better than that.
Yo, can you talk about Jeremy Corbyn and people accusing him of being an anti-Semite and how he's actually
Oh,
not?
he's just done all that.
I did point that out earlier on, but I'll deal with it one more time.
Like the smears of the media.
I'll deal with it one more time. Jeremy Corbyn has spent, you see, this is the point. Here you get in this argument, leave, remain, leave, remain. Who set that agenda? You see, the gentleman here started shouting it out. And when you actually asked him, He didn't know why he was saying it.
The Labour Party voted
Hang
for
on,
Article 50.
you can say
Start
this.
him off
The
again.
Labour Party voted for
You
Article
can,
50.
you can say this. You're a Labour Party member. You're a Remain supporter. You want him to say that, right? Although last election, I remember you were kind of reluctant to back Labour. Never mind. By the by,
I would like the leader
there's
to
a good
reflect the
right.
majority
There's a
opinion
good
in the
reason
party.
behind your logic. I don't agree with it,
Would follow
but there's
the
reason
majority
behind it.
opinion.
There
what's
was
the
no
majority opinion?
reason behind you saying that.
Yeah. That's why he'll do a second referendum.
I understand that. I'm pointing this out because of the question the gentleman here asked. I'm saying the agendas about Jeremy Corbyn, who he is, what he stands for, what he believes in, they are not set by Jeremy Corbyn. They are set by the mainstream media and the interests of their owners, who are billionaires. No, I said the
Mainstream
agenda
people.
is set. So, for example, the Andrew Neil interview a few days ago, which I didn't watch, but I understand was excruciatingly painful.
You could have recorded it,
I
and
didn't
you know
want
it's very
to watch
important.
it. Well, it's not very important. I
Who's the
believe
snooze
the
gonna be
gentleman here has
demolished?
hit the nail on the head when he says, what is all this about? Because it's not because Jeremy Corbyn's anti-Semitic, nor because anyone specifically in the Labour Party who's been expelled is anti-Semitic either.
Chris
It's
Williams,
because anti-Semitic.
he was refused re-entry
He
into
was
the
expelled from the
party
Labour Party.
because of statements
He is
being
a
made
member of
by
Parliament.
various,
A
actions.
Labour member of Parliament. Hang on a minute. That all come out. That's just, you're spewing it out again and again. He has never, you used the words a minute ago, he was supporting Hamas.
Yes.
When exactly was that?
Flying to
Find one single piece of evidence that Jeremy Corbyn has ever tried and find one single piece of evidence that Jeremy Corbyn has ever used the words. You can take them back if you like. I'm not Andrew Neil. You can take them back. You said supported Hamas.
Yes.
When exactly was that?
He called him friends though, but he did apologise.
He said at a meeting.
Yeah, but he did
where
apologise.
He was trying to bring people together from different standpoints to try to resolve the Palestinian and Israeli crisis. And I hope you understand there is a crisis. Because, for example, I believe it was last year, my memory fades, but I believe it was last year, there was a Hamas-inspired revolt where people took slings and stones and they went to borders with fences with Israeli Defense Forces soldiers laughing and cheering when they shot dead. Was it nearly 1,000 people? Was it nearly 1,000 people? Maybe they injured 1,000, killed 200. I can't remember the exact figure. But look it up and you might remember the scenes. You know, the fence was over there by Oxford Street. When you got to about this distance, you get shot. Now,
Get shot by Hamas as well.
did you hear people then?
Of people running into the point.
They said, yes, I remember. The head of the Israeli Defense Force said, he said, it is legitimate to shoot them if they come near the border fence. It's legitimate to shoot them if they come near the fence. In other words, this is what he is opposing. Because let's make note of this. The British government, the pro-Israel lobby, inside the Tories and the Labour Party, they said not a word about the killings carried out by the Israeli Defense Force. Not a word against those killings.
Even no, Boris Johnson.
Unlike Jeremy Corbyn,
Johnson was sitting with Netanyahu. Netanyahu was bombing Dari, and in the end of the conversation,
Netanyahu,
seriously, he
now
said-
on trial for charges of corruption.
Again, that anti-Semitic. He said to Netanyahu, I am committed to this two-state solution. You
I'm sorry, did Johnson ban arms sales to Israel?
No.
Did he sanction Israel for the torture and murder and killing and incarceration of the Palestinian people? No, he did not.
Don't listen to his words.
That is the reason why. This political background, this political background is the reason why the chief rabbi, who, by the way, is a personal friend of Boris Johnson's, a personal friend of Boris. He was born and raised in South Africa. He should have known, like his parents knew, that South Africa was a barbaric state. What's that? What's that? I didn't hear you. Who's he? I don't know him. Who is he?
South African judge in South Africa.
In Gaza those years, and he rode all the.
What has he got to do with me? Sorry, where does this connect? Where does it connect?
Mr. Jeremy Corbyn, he was supporting this. He said he's right. Suddenly he's not.
He's right what? He's right what? I can't.
Who's right doing what?
I'm not getting any consistency from your argument. Do you want to come forward? I can't. I either can't hear it, or it's not consistent, or it's not logical. I don't know. So tell me, the issue of anti-Semitism.
Corbyn, by his action, doesn't show that he really supports the two-state solution. That's the bottom line.
Well, so what?
Oh, that's lovely.
I said, so what? You think his position, my friend, does the Israeli government support two-state solution? Does it? Really? Does it defend the rights of the Palestinian people?
The me side by side in peace. Do you want to see them?
Yeah, I would like to see them.
That's the bottom line for everyone.
The only way I believe that is possible comes back to the fundamental question I raised earlier on.
Yeah.
How can you bring peace to Israel? You asked me that, I'll give you my answer. I'll give you my answer. The answer is quite simple. It is, you have a society which represents the interests of the working people and the poor, Jewish, Arabic, Palestinian. And that society has control of the economy of Israel. That is known as socialism. By the way, socialism has a very powerful and strong historical root within the Jewish people. That route, however, in Britain, the overwhelming majority of Jewish people are on the right of the political spectrum. I don't deny that. And it is that right-wing, pro-Israeli government perspective that dominates the debate around anti-Semitism in relation to Jeremy Corbyn. And they don't oppose him because he's anti-Semitic. They oppose him because they believe that socialism, the fight for justice for the rights of working people and oppressed minorities, whether in Israel or in South Africa or anywhere else in the world, is an anathema to their regime. And that's why Israel, almost without exception, in its government standpoint and in its ruling class, supports reactionary governments all around the world and tries to undermine progressive governments all around the world. And they have been campaigning, leading figures in the Israeli establishment and the secret services have been campaigning against Jeremy Corbyn from the day he came to become leader of the Labour Party. Anybody who doesn't know that must be blind.
You can't hide his actions.
Sorry?
You can't hide his actions.
Can't what?
Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, why do you need to keep repeating the same allegations from 2015?
He says A.
If you have so many actions that are so terrible, why is it always the same ones that are repeated? Why are they always the same ones repeated? Supported Hamas. He never supported Hamas. No,
So
but
why
you keep
did he
repeating it.
release the
Why do you
support
keep repeating it?
terrorists that went to his grave?
What's that?
Why he flew to Tunis to the grey.
Sorry, when was this? When was this? Last year? The year before? 2015? He explained his position openly and clearly. You see, what the gentleman asked me earlier on was, why is this issue always raised? It is raised because the establishment, and there is a lobby within the establishment that is pro-Israel, pro-America, pro-reaction around the world, and that lobby is a powerful lobby that has been trying to undermine Jeremy Corbyn, not because of any international position he has, but because he stands up for the rights of the oppressed around the world. That's the very simple reason. There was an article in Haaretz only yesterday about this.
BBC News, mister.
BBC News what?
Jeremy Corbyn will not apologize ever for Tunisia. Worth no.
So what?
Oh,
So what?
So, don't
So
say
what?
that he's, no.
Does that make him
No,
anti-Semitic?
yeah, of course he
Not
does.
apologising.
Oh, come on.
Are you going to apologise for what you said earlier on?
For what are you-
Apologise. Apologise. Exactly. Exactly. For what? For bullshit.
Yeah, right.
For pure and absolute bullshit.
I'm not afraid to say anything I had to say.
Now,
I'm glad you didn't go on to rent control, because up to now I
Rent
agree.
control.
It's the rent control I'm going to
control.
get you at.
You see,
I will catch you out on
no,
the
you
rent
won't.
control.
What you'll do, because I know you, you're an honest individual.
Yes, thank
Right?
you.
I've known you many years at Speaker's Corner, and you have told me many times, not only this election, I think the last election, you told me you don't want rent controls because you're a landlord.
No, because
You are a
it
landlord,
doesn't. It doesn't work rent control.
Well, yes, but it helps the fact you're a landlord. You wouldn't have a strong opinion upon it, or such a strong opinion upon it, if you were a tenant.
No. May I say so?
Right.
All
So
go
the
finish your
point being, I'm merely trying to make this point. I'm not trying to have a go at you for being a landlord.
we do.
I'm merely trying to make the point. Standpoints of people often have a material foundation to them.
True.
Right? As a tenant, I am concerned about rent controls. I want rent controls. As a landlord, you are far, far more likely to be opposed to them.
Right.
That's a very simple material fact.
May I say something?
You may indeed.
So my point is, if we put you as a tenant on the side, me as a landlord on the side, and let's see, the point of rent control, why did they want to, why Corbyn wants to introduce that, is to solve the crisis, housing crisis, right? But what will rent control do? It will restrict landlords being able to pay for maintenance,
Well, yes, but you
and the
said-
properties will be dilapidated.
Wow.
Wait a minute. What is wrong? So, no, this is what happens.
You
But
see-
you're going to run away now.
I'm going to run away
Gotcha.
because I don't want to attack you
No,
for
we're
being the
just
representative of landlords.
May I say something
Your,
else?
your argument has coherence from the standpoint of a landlord. It has no coherence from the standpoint of a tenant. And in Britain,
Okay.
the records show that we have the worst private sector rental housing in housing standards in the whole of Western
I
Europe.
agree with you.
So surely there is something wrong. Now you might argue that you as a landlord, I don't know, I'm not your tenant.
No, yeah.
You as a landlord might be a really good landlord, I don't know.
I am, actually.
But there are plenty of squalid places that I have visited, and I defend tenants' rights, so I see it from the other point of view. I've been in the High Court about tenants' rights, so I'm quite familiar with the issue. I believe, from the point of view of Jeremy Corbyn, if he wants to get more votes, his point of view will be more logical to say, we'll build new housing, we'll provide social housing, and we'll reduce the rents. It's perfectly logical for him to argue that, just as it's perfectly logical for you to say you're opposed to that. That's the point I'm making. Is the interest. People decide policies they support based on interest. The gentleman here is defending Israel because it's in his interest to do
It happens to be my...
Not because he's being objective. He's not like a Guatemalan
Wait a minute.
observing it from outer space. Right? You have an interest in defending it.
No, excuse me. When Tony Blair was in power and Mr. Rabin was alive and the peace process was the light of the world.
I'm sorry, am I right? Am I right to guess that you might be Israeli or Jewish?
I'm Jewish.
Right. So
I'm proud
you
to
have
be
an
Jewish.
you
I
have
have
an
no problem to say
interest.
that.
You have an interest
But
like
that's
he's a
not the
landlord,
issue, 'cause-
and he
No,
defends
that's not the issue.
landlordism.
I'm a left.
And you're a
I'm a
supporter,
left.
but you're a supporter of Israel.
I am support. I support
You're a
Israel.
supporter of Israel,
I
and
support
we don't know how
Israel as a
far that
country.
goes.
I
you
don't
know.
support
Because when I
part of
talked about
the
talked about
policies.
people being shot dead for going near a fence, you didn't seem to
I
mind
put you
that.
in your place and
You didn't
put the
seem to
facts.
mind.
No, of course I didn't seem to mind. It
You were-
hurts me. 'Cause
Sorry?
as I told you afterwards, did I tell you I wanted
didn't
to
hear.
live side by side in peace? This is
So
what
you
I wish.
oppose those killings.
Do you
I
oppose
suppose
that?
any killing.
Okay,
This is the
fair
worst of the worst.
So we agree. No,
but
please,
about
The point
not-
was,
Tony
the point
Blair
was,
a great
you are
leader of
speaking,
Labour.
you are speaking
Yes.
with a point of view connected to certain interests. That's what I was making.
No, nothing to do with that. 'cause I mean,
Please, sir.
In any case, hold on a minute. We have Jeremy Corbyn's brother here who will address you on why you should vote Labour.
Oh, all right.
I would ask you this, just first of all, I will say the following. For obvious reasons, because of the influence of the mass media, for obvious reasons, there will be limits to what Piers will say now, in particular on this question. Now, I've explained why that would be the case in the discussions I've had. I hope you'll accept that as he gets up and speaks. For a few minutes, Piers Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader's brother.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll give this to you now anyway.
That's not fair. You mowed me down.
Greetings.
I was perfectly fair.
What? You want a minute?
You go ahead, Uncle, go ahead.
So, may I stand up here?
You may indeed, you may.
Is it working?
He's on.
First of all, are you
Higher.
younger or older than Jeremy Corbyn?
I'm older.
And have you gone in any arguments with him while you were kids?
No.
It's lying already. Every siblings argue with each other. But anyway,
Yes, but not on.
using every chance to attack.
We agreed on many things.
You're using every chance.
Well, hello!
hello!
Are
Welcome.
you ready for December the 12th?
Yes.
Vote Labour, December the 12th. It's time for real change.
Excellent.
This is the manifesto. It's, I would say, a manifesto to change Britain for good. Now, you remember who said that only a week or two ago? Nigel Farage. He said we wanted to change Britain for good. And what did he do? He went off with Boris Johnson, took down their opposition to Tory Remainer MPs, and they just formed an anti-Labour alliance. That is what has happened to Nigel Farage. Can you trust him?
Who, Nigel?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Nigel.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you trust Boris Johnson?
No.
Can you trust Nigel Farage?
Yes.
Well, there's one here who does, but I must say you must be misguided, sir. If he was real, they would have stood their MPs, candidates, against Tory Remainers, but they didn't. Their biggest fear is Jeremy Corbyn winning the general election.
Yeah.
That overrules everything they've got to say about Brexit.
That's right.
And what are they talking about on Brexit? They're putting forward a Brexit betrayal. The betrayal deal which Boris Johnson is talking about has us abiding by EU rules but having no vote and no say. It takes away our defence policy. It takes away our independent foreign policy.
It leaves us paying 39 billion. It makes Britain a colony of the European Union and effectively confiscates Northern Ireland from the United Kingdom.
What makes you think Labour will negotiate a better deal?
A very
Well,
good question.
anything Labour does would first of all not destroy the United Kingdom, and secondly, it could not be worse than being imprisoned by the European Union. Brexit MP candidates themselves have said
workers' rights
they prefer to vote Remain than for the Tory Brexit deal. Look, let's be clear.
There wasn't much of a difference.
Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson are Pied Pipers to lead the British working class into never-ending nonsense arguments about Brexit or put us in prison in the European Union, because that is in the interest of the biggest capitalists around the world coming from Wall Street. Boris Johnson is interested, first of all, in Boris Johnson, whereas my brother and me are interested in the future and real change. If Jeremy was a careerist like Boris Johnson, he would never have stayed on the back benches for 25 years. He would have been climbing up the greasy pole. But instead, he stood for principles, which is why he's here. Now, I know around this country, there's a lot of people who've never voted before. But they will vote for my brother, Jeremy Corbyn, because he's the only one who stands for real change for the good of the people. So that's why you've got to go out there from now till then, 11 days to go. Tell your friends to vote Labour, but get in touch with anybody in a marginal seat. Putney, marginal seat in Putney. Labour can win Putney. Battersea, we've won it before. It's close, go there and help. Kensington, go there and help.
Everyone vote Labour.
There's numbers of marginal seats around the world. Well, around London, around Britain. Go on the website.
Yeah, Chingford.
Type in Chingford, there's another one. Type in Labour campaigning 2019 and you will find them. Go there and help.
Money is proposing to do.
Now, what are the issues in this election?
The forest money tree.
Well,
the money forest of Jeremy Corbyn.
Interest rates are 0.75%. The government could borrow.
The Labour campaign for Brexit would be for a better deal than anything going on now, and it does respect the vote because it's saying we're going to negotiate a proper deal, not nonsense, a fake deal.
You're going to have
like
a form of
Boris.
Remain versus Remain. That's what you're going to have.
But there's a lot of other issues as well.
According to Nigel Farage, Johnson's deal is Remain.
It is.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
That's what I'm saying.
What's to complain about?
You see, the Brexit argument is a never-ending thing.
Yeah.
Any government that gets in will carry on arguing about Brexit, either because their own parties are split or the European Union wants it to carry on. It's a diversion from the real issue now of redistributing wealth downwards and giving a real fiscal stimulus to the economy, which is what Labour's campaign will do. They have all these green policies. A lot of them are based, I do not agree with anything almost from Extinction Rebellion. But the Labour green policy includes insulating homes, which is good. It'll be a fiscal stimulus for many industries, which is good. So we have to support that, whatever we think about the so-called fakery of climate change. But the fiscal stimulus coming from Labour over green policies will be good. And we will hold Labour to account, obviously, to keep down energy prices, not let energy prices go up as they are.
This is why it's good that they from private, it should not be in private hands. Electricity, water.
Yes. We have to nationalise these basic industries because that is the way they can be run democratically. We have to have more police numbers because every election you have some terrorist scare, something going on, big police operations, every referendum. They're guaranteed to happen. But when they do happen, it really points out, whatever the intentions of those who did it, it really points out the inadequacy of police operations in this country. You see, we've had police carrying green octopuses down Oxford Street as part of Extinction Rebellion. Look, this is madness. We have knifings in Tottenham or all over the country, all over London, where we don't have enough police to deal with them. We have to organise police to do what they need to do, stop knife crime, whether it's these big, terrorist activities or just, knife crime that's happening on a weekly basis in London, which must be stopped.
How's he going to do that then?
More police.
Well, we'll have to spend more police. Now here we have.
How many more?
Boris Johnson can't be trusted, Labour can. And I'm going to read out the key points on Labour's leaflet here, which I'll hand out in a minute. We'll immediately raise the minimum wage to £10.
And only work 4 days a week. And
free personal care for the elderly. End homelessness and make housing affordable. That is a fantastic promise. It can be done. Britain is the 5th richest nation in the world, and we have people sleeping on the streets. It is a disgrace. Boris Johnson says he wants to end it. They've had years to end it. The Tories will never end poverty. They'll have you talking about Brexit till kingdom come, as long as they can keep that going and never end poverty. Labour will ban fracking. Fracking poisons the water table. That must be done. Labour will scrap tuition fees. And Labour will let people decide on the Brexit issue when they have a deal. Now, my brother is right to say he's going to be neutral on that. How can he know how good the deal they've got is going to be? Whatever though, I tell you, the argument about Brexit is never ending. So put it aside and vote for a better future. Vote Labour on December the 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. Bravo. Where did they get the money for all of this?
Take some and pass them on.
Huh?
That is not important.
You'll take a few, pass them on.
Not important.
This is very important. How do you get to pay for all of it? I vote Labour. So
Just any more? Yeah. Question over here.
what do you think about Corbyn's chances of getting any of these policies through when he's still got so many Blairites here?
Sure. Very good question. Just been asked, what about the Blairite opposition to my brother when he gets elected? Well, all the MPs have signed up to these policies. So they will carry out those. They will delay, that's true. But there'll be such pressure from below, I think most of the policies will get through. I agree there's going to be problems, but you have to be ready to demonstrate for the policies that you're going to vote for. Thank you. Stay on the streets.
Okay.
Hey, thank you.
Good luck to your
Thank
brother.
you very much.
He's a great politician and guy. He's the only one I trust.
All right.
Everybody
Corbyn.
else is...
Well, he's a nice guy. At least he keeps his people.
Yes, for everybody. The fact is that people don't understand.
I'll show you something that happened in Croydon.
Croydon as well, I should have mentioned Croydon.
But the politics, they don't like it.
ContentCOE everything from your humanity.
Come, man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. Listen.
We're just discussing something that's
Man, don't listen to ITV. I don't even listen to Sky YT. I just listen to COE. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. I don't even listen to
he
Sky
prefers to wear something more authentically representative of the whole of Africa. To which I replied that it's very hard to locate anything that's authentically anything in the quest for cultural purism. It's really difficult to pinpoint an artifact and say, I'll have that because it truly represents